Hey, everybody. Welcome into the podcast, partscounterguru.com. Glad to be back in the building here. I'm Jay, and that's Keith. Keith, how are you doing today?
Well, I got to be honest with you. I'm kind of having some thoughts about hurting myself.
What? Do I need to call the hotline?
I don't know, maybe. I was driving yesterday, had the radio on, and I heard Train and Kenny G covering Careless Whisper.
And
I tried not to throw up on my shoes, but I'm having some bad thoughts, man.
I'm glad I missed that. That's pretty. So, they're not like at the end of their careers or something, are they?
I don't know, man. It was just, I just had satellite radio on, which we've discussed trying to ignore the compression.
What channel was that on?
I'm not. I'm not gonna. I can't.
Okay, because after this is over, please let me know because I don't want to catch that.
Well, and here's the thing. I kind of like Train. I
love Train. I think they're great.
And they did some Zeppelin when I saw them live, and
yeah, they're a great band.
In fact, when I saw them perform live, they said, we kind of got into this for doing stuff like this, and they covered a Zeppelin song. They released an album called, I think it was Train Does Zeppelin, and the whole album is them covering like Led Zeppelin 3 it's one of the cover to cover. They just covered a Zeppelin album. So look, I lived through the 80s. There's a lot of things that I like about the 80s. Wham ain't one of them, and certainly not Careless Whisper.
No, Careless Whisper was not a. It was a fan favorite if you were a Wham or George Michael fan. But I'm sorry, man. That's a tough one for me.
And it's not bad. Like you just said. It's they do a good job covering that song.
Oh, I'm sure.
Don't need to hear it ever again, ever.
No, I'm with you. That could have been archived. Yeah, that could have been archived and never came back out, as far as I was concerned.
So these are the kinds of things when they happen, you sort of, in my head, I see sort of the band sitting around like a table having a meeting, like at a diner or something. And somebody over here is going, "Let's cover a Zeppelin song," and somebody over here's got an idea, and somebody goes, "Hey, let's cover Wham." And what does the rest of the band do when that guy, you should have just slapped him and moved on.
I would have written his last check and said, "You're not in the band anymore." I will guarantee you that it was a suit sitting in the room. That was a Wham.
We need to get back on the pop charts. Yeah, right. You're probably
exactly. Right. But so. Do you feel better now? Have I talked you off the ledge?
A little bit. You know what would make me feel really great? Let's do a little news. That? You want to do some news?
Let's do some news.
All right, let's do some news.
Let's talk news. All right. And now.
Whoop. Go ahead. Sorry. There I am stepping on you. And now. Yeah. Always.
And now, bring in the local and current events for the day.
So a couple big things in the automotive world. One of them I kind of primed you for, but where do we want? You want to go? Let's do the Supra. You want to talk about the Supra? Toyota's.
Let's talk about the Supra. I mean, Supra. I think that's actually one of those cars, man. Back when I was younger, that I actually learned how to drive a stick shift in.
Yeah.
Manual transmission. It's a fun car to drive.
So
rear-wheel drive, just great.
Well, it's their performance car. So a lot of Toyota fans have been begging for a while for them to bring back the Supra, and Toyota recently announced that they're going to do it, and they gave us a little bit of details on how they're going to do it. And I guess full disclosure, and we're going to get into this a little bit on this podcast. We're going to get into the topic of brand loyalty, but my beloved Toyota, whom I have owned many products from, and back in the day, I think it was 1993 when my dad was a diehard Ford fan. Ford's his whole life, and he said, it's time for me to buy a new car. What do you think I should get? And now this is a big deal for a guy that, first of all, when you get older, you don't like change. Everything is, safety and the same, right?
Right.
And I went up, Toyota Corolla, here you go. And I picked it out for him, and he went and bought it. And to this day, that car, over 200,000 miles, still running. My sister drives it as kind of just a grocery getter.
Well, that's a testament to the product, period. Yeah. I mean, Toyota's always done a really good job of not only building a reliable vehicle, but keeping you on the edge of your seat for stuff coming down the road. And this is a fine example of that.
Well, and this may surprise you, Jay, but I felt like when I read I saw Supra's coming back, and I was like, yes. Now, as a former owner of a 370Z, a Nissan 370Z with the
I love that car, by the way.
You sort of told me to buy it, but it was the Roadster, so that's the convertible. It had the Nismo brake. It was as close as I could get to a Nismo in the Roadster because Nissan didn't make the Nismo version of the convertible. But everybody's sort of going to lap times are king now. So gone are the days of a muscle car sledgehammer that can't corner, because to be honest, where are you going to do that? Reality is, if you're going on the track, you want good lap times. If you're driving in the real world, cornering matters. I mean, Ford going their most recent GT is a 6. Corvette's even talking, of all things, about a lighter, smaller engine. So it makes sense then that this Supra is kind of a smaller platform, lighter, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to the effect of, am I wrong? But didn't I picked up on something? They may even enter NASCAR. Is that
Toyota's been in NASCAR?
No. I'm talking about that particular model.
Oh.
Getting away from the Camry.
Well, that would be good. Let's face it. That's all marketing. I mean.
Yeah, and it makes sense though for me as far as I'm concerned. But now, it's a 2-door. So
now,
how do they? Yeah. So
when I read the detail, we both read details on this Supra, and I had a little bit of a careless whisper moment. I felt kind of the same way when I read the details. So it looks like they're going to use the BMW Z4 chassis.
Yes, that is and BMW engine.
An engine.
There's some technology there. Am I right?
Sure. But if you're Toyota and you're known for what? Smaller, that's Toyota's wheelhouse. Smaller engines, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm reading into this, you're basically saying to me, if you're Toyota, is we have no long-term vision for this car. We are slapping Supra, the badge Supra, on a vehicle because you asked for one, and we're going to call it Supra, and here you go.
Yeah.
But there's no vision there of selling this thing past this generation, past this current body style, because it's a BMW. And see, Toyota, you can't tell me they don't have the tech. They've got all those small engines and Scions. They could get a performance vehicle. They don't want to spend the R&D dollars to do it themselves.
Well, where are they focusing their dollars at, though? That's
the point right there. They do not see the performance market, these kinds of vehicles, as their core business, as they don't think that there's enough return on that investment to spend the R&D dollars to do it themselves. That's what I read in it when I saw the BMW was doing the engine.
Yeah, I mean, you can perceive it that way. They had, what was it? Of course, the Scion brand is gone now. I mean, they're no longer producing the Scion. I think, was it 2016 or 17 was the last year for the Scion?
Okay, but yeah.
Somewhere in that.
But how long has this car been in development? I mean, you see what I'm saying? Like,
this thing has been in development since the day it left production. I mean, they've been talking about the return of this thing for all these years, and they hinted in 2012, I think it was, that it was coming back, and it failed. Was it an FT1?
Well, that was the... Yeah, they always do FT with their concept cars, which is future Toyota.
Right. Correct. And it went away. So it could be, you're right, if you think about it, that they're just throwing something together to put it out there just because based on the consumer, not so much the consumer demand, but a loyal customer demand. In other words, we want this back.
The customers we want this back that are brand loyal, because there's no long-term vision. Now you've got to consult with BMW in a few years to make sure they're going to be okay with whatever you want to do and continue to do. I just don't see it working. Now, what's interesting to me is that they've kind of doubled down on the Tacoma side, and there was some news that came out this week on that as well. And they're going to release, I think it's at the Chicago Auto Show, they're going to have a newly redesigned Tacoma.
That is correct.
When Ford, who left the Ranger in the United States, stopped production on that a while back, and several other manufacturers got out of that market, Toyota didn't. They said, no, we're going to continue down this road, and they did.
Thank goodness. It's a great truck.
Yeah. It's a fantastic truck. And now you've got Jeep coming back into it with the...
Gladiator.
The Commando, that's right.
The Commando, yes.
The Gladiator Commando. Jerry. Yeah. And
we're loving every minute of it.
And then, of course, Ford now with not just the Ranger, but now apparently they're going to make an even smaller underneath size, smaller than a Ranger, and so.
Which I don't understand that, but whatever.
All right. So, but Toyota's like, nope. We're staying in this market. We're putting R&D dollars into it. We want to be on top in the small truck segment.
And they've led on to look at, a hybrid version as well.
Yeah.
I mean, they're looking at that. So
whatever they're thinking, and I'm an outdoorsman. I'm a fan of off-road vehicles, and I'm a fan of Toyota, and that's good, I guess, if you're a fan of all of those things. But I'm also a fan of, I go do track days on motorcycles, and I like cars that I can carve up canyons with. And if you're into those kinds of things and you're a Toyota fan, as am I just don't know that I would go spend the money on a Supra over something else in that same price range, because it's a BMW.
My prediction with this particular vehicle is that it will not come on strong and it will disappear.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
It'll be out there. So for all of you Celica Supra fans, you might want to go ahead and get one when they come out, because they're going to be so rare. Did you see the sticker price on the thing?
No. What's it going to ballpark?
In the $60,000 range.
Yeah, okay. See, I see that, and I immediately start looking at like a Jaguar F-Type or something.
Absolutely. There are way too many other vehicles out there that would probably outperform. The technology and the creature comforts that go along with some of those vehicles that are out there, the sports models that are out, you're going to probably tend to go there, which ties into brand loyalty again.
Yeah.
So
hey, I got a follow-up. I want to dive into this brand loyalty thing a little bit, but just as a follow-up from a previous podcast where we did a couple episodes on the OBD stuff, and while we're talking about Toyota, one of my favorite places to go online is the FJ Cruiser forums, which are very popular, and you can learn a lot of stuff. Like, there's really cool things.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was on the tip of my brain to bring up to you this morning, because I know you're such a FJ fan.
Yeah.
Toyota brand fan as well. Their YouTube channel is on, it's pretty incredible. It's very well done. So I encourage anybody who's a Toyota owner, or even if you're not a Toyota owner, go out and check them out. I think it's pretty cool.
After you check out the Parts Counter Gurus YouTube, then you can click on over to that Toyota.
Yeah.
I mean, they have guys that have literally manufactured accessories based on demand from those forums. And I own some of that stuff.
Yes.
And it's pretty cool stuff. So I'm reading on the forums the other day, that somebody did they replaced the factory head unit. And head units are something else we've talked about on a previous podcast. And this particular head unit had OBD capabilities. Mm-hmm. And it did a Bluetooth dongle that he plugged in. And it would show you it was configurable dials on your radio head unit on that LCD display, right? And the guy said, he goes, I've noticed that when I get out of my car and I try to lock the door with my key fob, if I don't do it within the first second, I have to wait about 30 seconds before it will let me lock it. I've got a heads-up display that I'm about to toss out of my FJ, and it's doing something similar. I can't lock my doors. So these OBD guys, we go back and listen.
We've talked about it.
The podcast. There's 2 of them on OBD. And there's a really good product that we've reviewed, and you can find that on there's a mentioned on the podcast section of our web. What's our website, Jay?
That would be www.partscounterguru.com.
That's right.
Or gurus.com.
That's right. Either one. And there's a mention on the podcast page on that website, and we'll list all the stuff that we've previously talked about. But this goes back to what I was saying, and you were saying as well. Be careful what you plug into those ports, because it can do weird things. And there's another example of some weird stuff going on, and that could be because Toyota's doing something that is, what was the title, manufacturer's discretion through one of those pinouts.
That's correct. As a matter of fact, Kia recommends not doing it. They will not warranty the vehicle if you're using a different source to plug into their ports. So just be mindful of that.
There you go. So even though I'm a Toyota fan, I would say that I am probably, and I think you could probably vouch for me here, Jay, that I try to live by the motto to, when it comes to technology or automobiles or really products in life, to just go with what does the job and try to be agnostic in terms of brand loyalty. And this is sort of a life belief of mine, but there are reasons for that. And so, we've had this conversation many times about brand loyalty. I grew up in a Ford family. It was nothing but Ford, and Ford had some pretty crappy products in a lot of years.
Oh boy. And they all have.
And GM has as well, and Honda has as well, and Acura has, and they all have. Toyota has. And so I really feel like, and I'm going to sort of open this box and then I'm going to turn you loose, but I really feel like you're doing yourself a disservice if you just continually buy the brand that you've always bought because it feels safe to you and they've never let you down before. That's actually, you're doing yourself a disservice. Now, look, if you've got family that works at the local GM factory or whatever, you're directly supporting them in their job. I get it. But I think that's a limited segment of the population.
Oh, very much so.
Sure, I've got cousins that work for, but that's a smaller number of people than the brand loyalty group that just says, well, Honda's never done me wrong, I'm just going to keep buying Honda.
Well, that's a good, you bring a good point up, especially today with the access of all this information right at our fingertips. We, as a society, can do a better job of reviewing that information. So, how is that going to affect brand loyalty in 5 years? Because we have the ability to be able to kind of vet these things before we go out and make a big purchase. I can give you a fine example. My father-in-law was in the market recently for a new sedan, and drove the GM product for years and absolutely loved them. And what he found was that GM was making some changes to their sedan lineup. He's a very tall man. And was looking for the leg room and the creature comforts that he always had, but it looked as if they were getting away from that, and went over to buy a Korean-made sedan. I think we know who that might be, and and absolutely loves it.
Well, they're not a new company anymore. I mean, they've got an established track record. I made fun of them for a while, and then it got to the point where the quality reports were, you couldn't ignore them.
No, I mean, we're almost, in the early days, when Hyundai and Kia came out, they were almost, in my opinion, in the class of a Yugo. I mean, that's how I looked upon those guys. But yes, being one in the industry, I have seen that parent company really, really making strides in being very competitive in price as well as, long-term reliability.
Well, and it's kind of cyclical. I mean, that happened in the 80s with the Japanese manufacturers, and people were,
it did.
I'm not buying no Japanese car, and, and
right.
all that.
And honestly, there's your brand loyalty right there, because, they're not going to buy that. But, we were kind of forced to, in those days, I think, to go over and purchase some of these smaller vehicles that had better fuel economy. And that was the whole driving factor, I think, back in those days was, the fuel costs were going up, and, everybody was hitting the panic button on the big land yachts that they were driving. And so that kind of brought Toyota to the front. And they became more competitive, and they spent their dollars on that. And they introduced vehicles that would compete with your Fords and your GMs and your Chryslers. I mean, Camry being one of them.
I'm gonna elaborate on this, on your point here. So I think, here is, if you ask me sort of to articulate why brand loyalty is probably worse for you than it is good for you as a consumer, I think here it is. So if you're by voting with your dollars, and I've talked a lot about Tesla, and I've talked a lot about how whether or not I'm not a fan of electric cars because of an environmental factor. I'm a fan of them because they are pushing the envelope of what can be done. Think about it like this: before the Model S hit the market, there really wasn't a consumer car out there with any sort of automated assistive driving. Now, I'm not really a fan of those, but my point is that they're pushing development and technology. Okay,
that's right.
Range in electric cars has skyrocketed thanks to Tesla. GM had the Chevy Volt, which was 40 miles, just laughable. So what you're doing by voting with your dollars is you are forcing the other companies to invest their R&D dollars, just like we were talking about with the Supra, into something to supply that public demand, right? So
that's right.
If you want a good off-road vehicle and you like whatever it is you like, if you're into the 6-cylinder smaller engine and you like that Tacoma and it's bulletproof, man, and you go buy one of those, you are forcing Ford, GM, all of them, Jeep, Chrysler. Now they're coming back into the market with their versions of these things because there's a demand for it, and they walked away from it, and maybe they were kind of getting their pants kicked a little. Getting kicked in the pants is what I meant to say. And now they've come back and said, we can do this too, and we've done a good job, and here it is. And nothing excites me more than to see that Bronco come back out.
Oh man, I'm looking forward to that. And you're speaking about consumer basically forcing their hand with some of these manufacturers. I mean, it's even trickled down into the motorcycle market, as you well know. I mean, look what Harley has done with their new EV bike.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a pretty interesting thing to watch them. Of course, let's face it, Harley is, their sales are down. I think what I saw, it was like 10% from one year to the next, and I think their shares fell 9.5% or something like that.
And as this shift happens from quarter mile time, look, because let's be honest, where are you going to go with your sledgehammer Hellcat that can do 0 to 60 and whatever that thing is ridiculous, 800 and something horsepower? Where are you going to run that thing? And don't say the local drag strip because there aren't any. Like you should. I would love to see a map of existing drag strips that are accessible to just private citizens, meaning, you don't have a funny car and you're not in the, in the NHRA circuit or whatever. And those things are sleds. Those are not cars.
We should, rockets. They are rockets. And what we should do, we should, for our fans, put together a list of places where you can actually go do that in the country.
Okay. But track days are much more accessible. Around here, you can go to Road Atlanta, or you can go to NCM, or, Birmingham has Barber Motorsports. I mean, they're, NOLA in New Orleans. But Harley has notoriously been kind of a cruiser mentality, kind of not real. And you get you're getting a crowd now that kind of they want to do something a little different, and
well, Harley's demographic, man, they were catering to the older crowd, which has come back to bite them in the rear end, because honestly, the younger generation, they're not into the Harleys like I am and still am and will be, because I'm just I love the brand. I'm loyal to the brand. So
I pulled up at a gas station in my hometown. This was 3 or 4 months ago, and now I own a Ducati. I've owned a lot of stuff. I just happen to have I've got a track bike that's a Honda. I've got some dirt bikes that are Hondas. And I had my dirt bikes on my trailer, and I have a son, and we were going trail riding in the woods, and, I pull in and gassing the bikes up, and there's this really nice-looking Harley, and the guy has this, helmet on, and he's putting gas on the other side of the pump, and he approaches me, and he goes, "Man, they're making them small," because I had a little 50cc Honda on the trailer, and I go, "Yeah," you got to start the drug early, we were kind of joking, and we started talking about his bike, and he had the Harley... Is it the sport? It's
Sportster?
Yeah.
Sportster? Yeah.
It was in an olive wrap, OD green, but it was real modern looking, real like. Not the V-Rod. Do they still make the V-Rod?
The V-Rod I don't believe is in production right now.
Okay, well,
I don't believe it is, but
somebody correct me on this, but because I'm not that much of a Harley fan.
So Buell is the.
No, it's not an Eric Buell. It's not a.
Okay.
It's a current, like, it was a new Harley.
All right. They can't. But was it made to look old, or was it?
No, it was made to appeal. And this is like literally I'm like checking out his bike, and I'm like, look at this. Like, they've lowered the seats. It's a little lower. Like, it's made to corner. It's got a little bit of a gnarlier look, and it's got and you're not with the ape hangers up here. I mean, that bike was made to you can carve up some canyon roads with it. And
I think it's called it's the low. It's the low.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, and then I said to the guy, and I hope he didn't take this as an insult, but I was like, I've never really been a huge Harley fan, but I'm going to tell you what, that is a good looking bike, and I would totally own that bike. That is a great looking bike. Well, he pops his helmet off, and it's Dierks Bentley.
Oh, awesome! Did he sing for you while he was there?
No, I just acted like I didn't know. I mean, I didn't want to be like because we were just two guys talking, and and he popped his helmet off, and whatever. But
Dierks,
I'm pretty sure it was anyway. But yeah, so Harley has made an effort to start trying to appeal to a different crowd. I think they have to do that. I think they're doing that with their electric bikes, and good for them.
It is.
And if they're good, buy one. Push that envelope. Make the other manufacturers keep up. If you're looking at from a vehicle standpoint, 4 wheels, and you're not sure, well, that's what you got us for. Hit us up at partscounterguru.com. There's an Ask Us a Question page. You can drop us a note if you've got something you're looking at. We'd love to hear from you. I would
say... It's the street rod, by the way.
Oh, that's it.
You're asking. It's the street rod.
It was rod something. Okay. Yeah.
Street rod. I couldn't. Sorry, guys. I had it at the tip of my brain. I knew the V rod was there,
well, that's what we got the internet for.
Yeah, it's the street rod. So there you go. And what they're trying to do with the Sportsters, by the way, is to appeal to that nostalgic rider. I think that for me, I think that the Sportster for someone who's just getting into Harley Davidson is actually a great model to start with, because you can get them really low to where your center of gravity is just perfect. And, let's face it, if you haven't been on a really large cruiser,
heavy bike,
it's a real heavy bike. But the Sportster allows you to have a lot more fun with a lighter bike, a lower center of gravity, and the rake is a little bit different than, say, like your was a lot different actually on the, what they call them, the wide glides. The wide glides are pretty awesome. They're like, for me, they're like the Cadillac of the bike, in my opinion. So outside of going out and buying a big cruiser.
And you can get one of those, and you're gonna fit in with any crowd you ride with, right? I mean, it's just a good-looking bike that handles good. And so back to brand loyalty. So, if you're, let me give you a current kind of pop culture outside of the automotive industry, so to speak, example of this. So Apple, largest tech company in the world, just released their earnings report for the 2018 holiday season yesterday. And this is something, Jay, you and I have talked about off the air many times, but I have increasingly become wary of Apple just buying them because they're Apple, because their product quality has suffered a little bit, but more importantly, their innovation has suffered heavily. Now, they just haven't come out with anything insanely great in the past 4 or 5 years, and they've caught a fair amount of heat.
They have their quality issues that have really expanded. I mean, they've issues. So
if you're not going to innovate, and this is where they kind of got themselves in trouble, they just kept quietly raising the prices of the iPhones to sort of supplement that we're not coming out with anything new. iPhone is 2/3 of their income, by the way. So that's there's a lot of eggs in that basket. And if you're not going to continually push development on product, what do you have left? And you're the king, so you've got to be outpacing everybody else. So then they kind of hung their hat on, well, we're secure, and they took that big ad out at CES where they plastered on the side of the hotel wall across from the convention center. It said, what happens on your iPhone stays on your iPhone. And then this week there's this massive glitch in FaceTime, and you can actually call somebody. If I called you and you hit the power button, I could end up calling somebody else or hear what you're talking about, or even though you didn't answer the call. And it's like, okay, well, you just touted that you were the security king, and you got caught with your pants down.
Nail in the coffin.
So, and Apple's not I own stock in Apple, and they announced, this is highly unusual for them, they halted trading not too long ago because they said, we're not going to hit our iPhone sales numbers, guys. We're just warning you. And it came out yesterday that they did not. They did manage to turn a profit, and they beat their earnings estimates, which is a good thing, but they did not do it. They were slumped on the phone sales side. So brand loyalty, in other words, continuing to reward Apple just because you've owned Apple stuff in the past, is not doing you any favors. Because now they're going to be forced to go out and figure something new out, or they're going to struggle and suffer a little bit. So that's kind of the pop culture brand loyalty example I can give you.
Right. And speaking of something here, you're talking about that, and I don't know what the date was on this, but here's an example of the brand loyalty. Their customers, 78% of Apple's customers say they couldn't imagine having a different phone. 76% of Apple's customers are replacing their iPhones with another iPhone. 59% of iPhone owners say they wouldn't consider researching other phones before their next upgrade.
That's comforting. That's a good percentage. Now, look, nothing wrong with Apple products. Those are good phones. Not trying to dog them. We're recording the podcast on Apple products. Okay, I'm not an anti-Apple guy. Before I start getting I welcome your letters. But I'm just saying, be with that 59%. Go do your homework, look and see and be willing to consider other options. Maybe not this time around. Maybe this time around you stick with that Ford, but now you've sort of got the itch to, and speaking of Fords, Ford is kind of famously announced that they're getting out of the car business in the United States, meaning they're going to continue to produce Mustangs and Focus?
The GT? No, the Focus is going to go away
Fusion.
as well.
It's a Fusion.
Right. So, yes, and that's a good point. That is a very good point.
So Ford would have you believe, if you're a Ford fan, and GM's doing the same thing. They're not announcing specifically what their lineup's going to be, or at least I haven't seen it. But Ford would have you believe there's just not a market for sedans, that they're not selling as well as they used to.
Right. But they are not.
And you and I have talked about this off the air, so to speak. You have some thoughts on this that maybe... So if I'm a Ford fan, I'm just going to go, all right, well, what else you got to sell me, right? And I'm forced to change based on what Ford tells me I need instead of what I think I need. Maybe I'm a sales guy and I need a four-door car, Somebody's
going to be waiting in the bushes to take up the slack.
That's a great visual. Now I've just got this image in my head of a salesperson hiding in the bushes, waiting for me to hang on. Let me do my salesperson. Let me close my eyes. Hang on, salesperson. Okay, one more time.
The car.
There it is. All right.
Oh, yeah.
I can't do dealerships without the circus in some way, shape, or form. But so somebody's going to pick up that slack, right?
They are. Absolutely, they are. They're waiting in the wings for all of them to stop production on their larger sedans. And I just spoke of it moments ago about my father-in-law, because there was no effort on his favorite brand to proceed and continue to offer a vehicle that met his needs. He had to go over to another brand to do it. And Hyundai is going to continue to produce sedans. That's the bottom line. They are going to be waiting in the wings to pick up where they left off. So sedans will not way.
2 out of the 3 vehicles that Tesla produces in the United States are not SUVs. They're sedans. I mean, what is that? They have a Model X, so they call it an SUV. It's more of a crossover, but
it's just amazing.
Forward-thinking company.
It is. Here's the deal. You've got Ford and GM, Jeep, that are all they're putting all of their efforts into pickup trucks. I mean, they're bringing back the smaller pickup trucks. They have the larger pickup trucks. So
I got an idea. I just had an idea. You've watched this video slowly on replay, and you might see it happen like in real time. Got to be quick though, because when they happen here, it's and they're gone. Let's put a poll up on our Facebook page. And let's see if our fans are thinking about, of all our audience, what do you want your next vehicle to be? What should we, like, obviously we'll throw SUV in as an option. We'll throw sedan in as an option. We'll throw pickup in as an option.
Sports car, something, performance type vehicle. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, we'll do that. We'll get a poll up.
So by the time you hear this podcast, we're going to have a poll up on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Parts Counter Gurus with an S.
That's correct.
And
Instagram is the Parts Counter Gurus.
There you go. And we would like to hear what's your next vehicle. If you're not in the market for a car right now, that's okay. But just what would you buy if you had to buy one tomorrow?
Yeah. And who knows what you'll be heavily influenced by. We may put something out there to get some comments from you on that, which would be nice to kind of share with our audience as well. You can reach us on our website and comment there, which would be great. That's www.partscounterguru.com. So, well, we're talking about the brand loyalty, and not only, and you talked about Apple, where else does brand loyalty lie?
Oh.
What,
Everything.
Exactly. I can remember, my grandparents, living by Plymouth. They were Plymouth drivers, man. And they wouldn't buy anything else. And they were horrible when they were they were awful back in the 70s and 80s.
Well, and so here's another example of sort of brand loyalty not rewarding the consumer base. And Plymouth made me think of this. So both Chrysler and General Motors famously took bailout dollars from the U.S. government more or less a decade ago, right? Roughly.
That's it. Yeah, about that.
Ford did not. Shortly after the bailout happened, Chrysler took on Fiat. And Fiat had this model of really tiny, kind of just... we like big cars in America, and it's just an odd thing to see here driving on the streets. They're pretty small.
Hence the 500.
Yeah,
the
right.
Fiat 500.
And it's not your dad's Fiat, the Italian sort of. I had a girlfriend in high school who drove a Fiat Spider convertible, nice little, cool little car. I mean that those days are gone for Fiat. But Chrysler took the money. And the U.S. government said, we want you to focus on fuel economy, which isn't a bad thing.
No.
But they didn't really have the technology to make it happen quickly. And so they had to reduce the size and weight of the vehicles to accomplish that.
Yes.
And that's why you get the Fiat 500. And it's nothing against the car. It's not a great car, but...
No. But with that marriage, they brought in some emission technology that Chrysler did not have.
They did. But that's a long-term sort of outcome.
It is building towards the future, but you're right. To immediately impact the market, that's what they had to do.
And let's go back to this whole Supra topic for a second. So Mazda, who has notoriously remained lean and mean, and they're agile, and they can sort of develop what they want. Mm-hmm. And if you're kind of a driving enthusiast, they kind of try to market to that group. They revised they don't call it, I don't think they really brand it the Miata anymore, but their two-seater Roadster, they've recently, I think it was for the 17 model year or the 18 model year, they brought a new generation of it out.
Yes.
Well, now Fiat basically has just slapped a Fiat badge on that Mazda Roadster, and they're calling it a Fiat. I mean, what? Like, that is... There is no long-term vision in whoever...
Subaru and Scion?
Yeah, okay.
Right?
Yeah. Subaru is more of a... That's a start-to-finish production vision. Like, the way they make their... Yeah.
The BRZ is the one I'm referring to.
Right. But Subaru, I guess what I'm saying is Subaru is and hopefully will always continue to do things the way that they want to do them because of a set of standards they have. And GM, their owner, has allowed them to do that, and that appeals to a certain group of people, and good for them. And those people are loyal, and they vote with their dollars, and Subaru does a good job of honoring those commitments.
They do, and if you look at their marketing, you see very clearly who they're trying to attract in, and it works for them.
But now, was it the BRZ first, or was it the Scion version that was first, or did they come out at the same time?
Simultaneously.
Okay.
I remember doing the research on the engines.
And who built the car?
Wow.
Is it Toyota built it, or did...
Toyota.
Okay,
Toyota.
Of course
It's Toyota.
Yeah. It's a small engine.
Yeah, and that was what confused me, because when you're doing research on engines through Subaru, we all know what they use, the boxer engines, you know, and this was not, something of the norm. So
name me one time in history putting you on the spot a little bit here.
Well, let's see if I can do it.
I'm hoping you can't come up with anything. But if you can, it's not going to be much. Name me one time in history that a joint production effort has ever been entered into by two manufacturers, meaning like, Ford and Nissan, or in the case of the Subaru, or of the Supra. Sorry, now we've got all these manufacturers in my head. BMW and Toyota. Name me one time in history where two manufacturers have come together on a joint production project where that has ever lasted more than one generation of that automobile.
Boy, that's a good one.
There's just no forward-thinking vision involved.
No, and I'm thinking of, but you can't do it because GM encompasses Pontiac and Buick and all that. You can't really call that because it's still the same company.
Yeah, I'm not talking about Nissan doing the transmissions for the Ford minivans, or that is a component.
Correct.
Right.
Which that's shared across.
That goes on all the time.
At Ford, Mazda, yeah.
You get good at something, somebody else goes, well, now we don't have to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. We'll just use yours. It's reliable.
And it makes complete sense. Gosh, that's a good question, man. I can't really think of one that really stands out, to be honest with you. I mean, I know that Kia and Hyundai are together, and they use everything across the board. They just kind of, carve out different, fascias and rear ends to make them look a little different, but overall they're the same vehicles. But that's not the same as what you're referring to. And I can't think of anything that really stands out that it ever worked. You? I mean,
maybe one.
Bring it up. Let's hear it.
The Ford Ranger. Actually, I will go two, although they were built on the same platform.
2000 in the Ranger. Is that what you're talking about?
Those went through several generations together.
Yeah, and you're right. And you know what? Come to think of it, now that I'm thinking a little more, you also had Isuzu. Okay. That was involved with GM, but then you also had Mitsubishi.
Yeah.
Some borrowing of platforms there.
But there's a difference here in Toyota putting their own body on top of a BMW platform, and Isuzu just sticking their badge on the Chevy,
which is essentially
SUV,
what they've done,
and they're just that's rebadging.
Right, that's not a joint venture into the product.
Right, I'm taking my logo and sticking it on there. There's virtually no difference. And in the case of the Mazda pickup, I used to, back in the day when those were popular, the Ford Ranger, I would literally be installing cell phones in those pickups and pull the panels off, and it was nothing but Ford parts. It just said Ford on all the parts.
Absolutely.
There was no Mazda parts in that vehicle virtually.
No, the B2000 was the 2-liter, the B3000 was the 3-liter, which obviously were in the Rangers. Everything about those vehicles are the same, other than the badge. Really?
Yeah.
No?
So, I just, and that's not, so, just to kind of get us back on the brand loyalty, that's a rebadging. That's been going on forever. And you can even look at rebadging in the sense of, Ford and Lincoln getting to the point where it's just, Lincoln is just a rebadged Ford, and there's no difference, in between the Explorer and the Navigator or whatever. That's a Mercury, sorry, but no, Lincoln Navigator.
Well, Lincoln Navigator, you had the version of the Explorer was the, what they call it, gosh, see, Mercury's not even on the top of anybody's list anymore because it doesn't exist. They took it away, 8 years ago or whenever it was. Mountaineer,
right?
The Mercury Mountaineer.
That's
it. So, which we saw Pontiac go, Buick, Buick is still around, but you lost.
Yeah, which I have to ask, like,
Oldsmobile.
Why? Like what? Yeah, Oldsmobile went away. Buick's still around because they're hoping that. I mean.
Well, where's Buick going to go now that the sedan market's going away? Because that is
and their audience is literally dying.
Absolutely,
I mean, the only people that usually buy Buicks are over 50.
Yeah.
And they're not like when I get to be, 65, I'm not going to suddenly, I don't think, wake up one day and go, I want to buy a Buick. I just don't see that happening.
Right. I think that the biggest mistake in that regard was, Pontiac was a great animal, in my opinion. I mean, out of that came the GTO, the Firebird, the Trans Am. There were so many,
it was
muscle,
kind of a performance side of things.
It was their muscle cars, man, in my opinion. And I actually think that any GM brand lover, you may or may not agree with me, but I think that they missed the opportunity when the Bandit passed away to bring back the Trans Am.
Yeah.
I would have jumped all over that.
Yeah.
I mean, you've already got the platform with Camaro.
Right.
You could even bring back the GTO in its true form.
They're stuck. They're a little bit scared to try something. This goes back to brand look. They're scared to try something a little different because it isn't safe. This is how Nicolas Cage keeps getting movie gigs. Because at some point, somebody points back to a movie that he did that was successful, and they go, oh, well, I can't get fired for putting him in a role because I can just point to a movie that he's done before that made money. Right?
That's it.
And by voting with your dollars, you are forcing these manufacturers to try to push the envelope a little bit and go in directions that aren't necessarily safe for them, right? That they can't just keep churning out the same iPhone every year or whatever. And so let's say that I'm just Joe Average Parts Counter Guru fan consumer, and I'm thinking about buying a new car, and I'm willing to and I'm willing to take that leap of faith, so to speak, and branch out away from my Ford comfort zone or my GM comfort zone or my Toyota comfort zone or whatever. What's my first step? Like, what would you advise that person to do? And I guess let me take it a step further. Do your homework, but how?
Gosh, there's so many research tools out there on the internet. I mean, that's at your disposal. But you can go to any dealership and test drive any vehicle you want. And, I would say, put your butt in the seat, go rent the car. You can rent cars. Go rent a car for a day. Go try it. See what it's all about. Take the insurance out, and bring it back in one piece.
And that's a really good, like that. And we're not endorsing abusement of rental cars, by the way. And you've got us. Drop us a note if you're thinking about, you got a car in mind and you want to know a little something. There's a pretty good archival collective knowledge between the two of us of what's going on currently and historically in the automotive industry. Yeah,
and not only that, you can also contact us on our website and
what's that address?
That would be www.partscounterguru.com. You just like that, don't you? Have you been able to kind of channel that rolling off the tongue?
Yeah.
Are you getting there?
I don't know that we'll ever make it through a podcast when I won't fumble something.
Well, me too, but anyway. But I do know, I did wake up this morning knowing what our website address was, so it's good.
Yeah.
Repetitiveness.
All right, so I have something else to ask you, but I want to make sure before I take us off the brand loyalty topic, do you have anything more to add to that? We want to encourage you to do your homework. That is the most important takeaway from today's podcast. Right.
No, yeah, I encourage people to, like you said, do their homework, but just be open-minded when you're because I think the landscape has changed tremendously, which actually takes people away from that brand loyalty, in my opinion. There are so many offerings out there of great vehicles available to you in inventory. Again, I encourage you to go test drive one. Go rent the car. I've done that. You've done that recently, haven't you?
For sure. Allegedly,
Yeah. So, which, by the way, I'd like to bring this up that Keith has a good review on the what was it? The Lexus
the ES.
ES, the Lexus ES,
the 2019 ES.
Right. So go check that out. You can
Thanks.
go to our website and check that out on partscounterguru.com.
Watch me drive in circles in the parking lot. And
yeah, the YouTube channel. Well, you also have a nice a crew to film this, which was really good too. So I actually encourage everyone to go there and check it out. It's very well done.
Thanks. All right. So this hat you're wearing.
Yes.
So and you've thrown me off because the past couple podcasts you haven't had anything on your head, and you usually do. So
right.
I came in expecting, to just open into that, and then you got me off my game a little bit. But you've always got some sort of interesting headwear going on.
Right. Yeah.
This one reminds me of the old Amco logo.
That's right. Amco transmissions. Absolutely.
But that's not what it is.
No. Do you see what it is? Yeah.
Jay, you're turning into the world's worst interview here. That's not what it is. No,
it's Crux. It's Crux Fermentation Project. It's a brewery.
Okay.
They started out in an old Amco transmission building.
Hence the
absolutely.
colors and okay.
Yeah.
And
great beer, by the way.
Now, is it only in certain parts of the country?
Right now, it is.
Is it a chain or is it just one?
It is just one. They are not owned by anyone. They are an independent microbrewery.
Pacific Northwest.
Pacific Northwest. They're one of about 400.
Yeah, right. There's no shortage
up in this area.
So,
yes.
I hope they don't disappoint me in that they've got to have something in their offering that has a reference to some oil or transmission or, like they got to name one of their beers after some sort of engine lubricant type, right? Yes.
They're working on one right now.
Funny you should ask. I actually didn't know that, but it makes sense, right?
Yeah, it does. It does. And what's neat about it is if you go to the old building, it still has the original sign out there, and they just basically went with it. And now this is not the only logo, but this was my favorite hat.
Now, do the guys, the people that work there, do they run around with the shirts with the embroidered name tag on?
They do have the work shirts. It's pretty cool. I actually went to a brewer's night and talked to the guy about all of it. So it's they're an up and coming, fairly new. They're good. They're out of Seattle, I believe it is. But anyway, yeah, I love those guys. Great beer. We're gonna do something on beers. So stay tuned for that.
At least something.
Yeah. So was that your question about the hat? Is that what?
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of hats, I'd love to wear one. If you want to get one over to me.
Yeah. So here's the best way to do that. We first of all encourage you to become so we are able to continue doing these. It would be nice to have you as a patron, and you can become a patron by going to patreon.com/partscountergurus. I will put that up on the screen in post, as they say. And if you want to become a patron and then drop a note through Patreon, if you've got a hat that you want Jay to wear,
I will.
He's a little bit, I might have to price myself up on the bracket a little higher, but yeah. Now it's got to be like G-rated. It can't have anything inappropriate on it that'll get us restricted viewership. But yes, hit us up on Patreon if you've got a hat or other head paraphernalia that you're interested in seeing Jay wear on the program. The very best thing that you can do for us at this point is, and this doesn't cost you anything, tell a friend, tell them about the podcast, tell them about the website, which is what again, Jay?
www.partscountergurus.com.
There is a page on that website that says podcast links, and you can find all of our various offerings. If you are listening to this podcast, like on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, there is a video version on YouTube, and vice versa. If you are watching this video but you would rather hear it, we have audio-only versions of the podcast. Again, you can find that on our website. So the best thing you can do for us at this point is subscribe, tell a friend. Hopefully they'll subscribe. Tell them about the podcast. Tell them about the website. And that will enable us to keep doing what we're doing. Very good, man. Thanks. Very good. Yeah. Yeah. I want to join up now. You know, I'm. So anything else to before I close it off here? Any final thoughts? Keep us in mind for anything. We'll talk about it. All right. That's what I want to say. We're open. We're open for discussion. Brand loyalty doesn't stop at an automobile. Remember that. All right. So until next time, that is Jay over there. I am Keith. And remember, folks, only Sammy Hagar should drive with both feet.
Got one foot on the brake. That's right. Cause there's too much traffic. Oh!
I am rolling.
Are you? Because you look like you're sitting still.